Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Lauren Tessier of Life After Mold. I am a mold illness physician located here in beautiful Waterbury, Vermont. Today I am going to be answering an important question, and frankly this question is about the maintenance phase of treatment. A lot of people have a question about what do I do once I've been recovered to protect myself, and the reason why I want to answer this question, even though it might seem like it's something that is reserved for a very select few who've made it through treatment, it's actually a really wonderful thing to answer for those of you out there who need help and need assistance. I want you to hear that there is recovery and there's hope for recovery, and I want you to have an idea of what recovery looks like on the other side. So without further ado, I'm going to go over some information with regards to how we handle the maintenance stage of treatment. And this is really important because there's a lot of physicians out there who kind of get patients recovered, they detox them, they bind them, and maybe they don't address recovery of their different organ systems, or maybe they don't give them assistance in how to best protect themselves when they're exposed. So this is important information that I really think everyone should know. So first of all, I think it's very important for people to have a general awareness of exposure, and that can be exposure in their own home, that can be exposure in their community, friend's house, big box stores, churches, things along those lines. So what I have people do in their home is we typically encourage them to do kind of quarterly checks, almost like a quarterly report card, where they will go around their home and they'll have a little bit of a cheat sheet of what they should check in on. Like, are the French drains on the outside still doing okay? Are there any missing shingles on the roof? Or, is there some condensation around the window? Or do they feel a draft in XYZ? So some of this information for people to really grasp and build their own little cheat sheet can be located and summarized in the Mold Prevention 101 free e-booklet that's on my website. And so in that mold prevention ebook, it walks you through the different parts of the house that you want to check and make sure it's not exposed, or that they're not having water intrusions in those areas of the home. So that can be a really, really good outline of what your checklist would look like. So I encourage everyone to go ahead, download that for free at my website, www.lifeaftermold.com. Once again, lifeaftermold.com. And there'll be a heading up at the top that'll say free e-booklet or mold prevention ebook or something like that, and you'll be able to find it there. So having that checklist, walking through your home, doing these assessments, and really seeing how your house adds up. Is there some standing water in the basement that you didn't realize was there? Is the pipe or toilet tank sweating and it's accumulating on the floor? There's a lot of different things to really keep your finger on the pulse of. The other thing that I really want to encourage people to pay attention to in their own home as they're recovering is what is happening with dust, dander, dirt, debris. All of those are more or less the same thing, and they are required for mold growth. So the things that allow for mold growth are high humidity, a organic type of matter, so dust, debris, dirt, all that, and dander, and then poor ventilation, or air that's not circulating. So that is like a absolute foundation for mold growth. So another thing in addition to that checklist is really making sure that you keep up on house maintenance and house cleaning, because if the mold growth ingredients aren't there, then guess what? You're not going to have any mold growing in your home. Or you're going to have a lesser likelihood that you will have mold growing in your home. So keeping aware of the house, having your finger on the pulse of your home. The other thing that I have people do is really start to pay attention to where their exposures lie in their community. Is there that one big box store that you go into and you get a little woozy and headachy? Then maybe you probably shouldn't spend too much time in there. Maybe you could figure out delivery to your home for that, or you could potentially go in with some type of personal protection, and I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. The other thing there, it's not just big box homes. Maybe it's church basements or family members' homes, and you don't have to make a big thing about it. If you know that your home is a safe space, you can always choose to host people. And if you're worried about hosting people, in the winter or things like that, and having people come into your home, you can always host get-togethers outside and things like that. So, there's always a workaround, and that's always going to look very unique for everyone involved. So, personal protection in the maintenance phase. You have a few different options, and personal protection can be a little bit more obvious or a little bit less obvious. So we'll start with the less obvious. These filters here, this is the O2 nose filter. And these guys are really interesting. There's newer on the market, and they look like, can you see that? They look like they almost look like the buttons on Mickey Mouse's shorts, right? So what these do is they pop into your nostrils, and they won't go in too far. There's a little cord there that's connecting them, so you won't lose them up your nose, or you'd have to try really, really hard to do that, guys. So the nose O2 filters, I'm going to show you right now. They just pop in to your nose like this. I have a little puny nose, so I believe I'm using a small right now. And so if you take a peek there, take a gander right at my nose, what this ends up looking like is just a super subtle, almost like a little septum piercing. But I'm not cool enough to have a septum piercing. So there you go. This can be really helpful in instances where there is a lot of particulate happening. So I've gone to their website and I pulled up their white paper. So whenever you're looking at a product and you want to see what's happening with it, always look for their spec sheet, their technical sheet, their white paper. These are all different names for these things. So this product in particular, they have a 65% filtration rate. So the filter made by 3M used in these has a 65% filtration rate of things that are 2.5 microns and higher. So these are, larger things like dust, dander, pollen. So these can be really great during those seasons. Then they do 90% of things that are 10 microns and higher. So these tend to really go after the bigger, chunkier things. So super dusty situations can be really helpful, or can be really improved with these guys. And they don't really impede breathing too much. You can still take a nice big breath in. The other thing about these, it takes a little getting used to having something in your nose, but I've probably put these in now like 5 or 6 times, and it starts to feel a little bit more natural each time. But there's a little bit of a learning curve. I did have to reach out to the company and say, now, am I doing this right? What's happening here? And it seems to be a nice option for people. So this is more for the allergic reactive folks. Excuse me. So the people who have more of a chemical sensitivity, I would move away from these because it's just logic, it's just physics. That filter has too big of a gap for a lot of the chemicals and like volatile organic solvents and stuff like that to come through. So what I use instead is a VOG mask. So V as in Victor, VOG mask. Let me see if I can orient that. There we go. Sorry about the light. So VOG mask is awesome. And I'm not getting paid for either of these, just giving you my straight impression of these. The VOG mask is awesome. And it is yay big. There's 3 different sizes depending on the length of the bridge of your nose to your chin. I believe the one that I wear is a medium. So they are latex free, And they also have a organic version. So if you are sensitive to microfiber cloths, they have an organic version that you can roll with. So these guys are really cool in that they are technically classified as an N95, but for NIOSH standards, they're classified as an N99, meaning that they can filter things that are 0.3 microns and higher at about a 99% absorption rate, which is pretty cool. So the other really cool thing about these is it has a charcoal embedded fabric layer, and if you guys are kind of hip to the groove on everything, you'll know that charcoal is really good at kind of binding things and like adhering to things, right? And we call that adsorption, not adsorption. So that adsorption quality is in here. So if you have something big and chunky that makes it through the mask, that gets caught. And then the next round is, what about those organic solvents, those things that are a lot smaller? So these guys have the ability to adsorb and bind up that stuff in that charcoal layer. And so here is a little story about that. With regards to the Vogue mask, I've used this so many times. It's come to my aid so many different occasions. There were times where I've stayed in Airbnbs where people have mixed Downy fabric softener and water and sprayed it around the room, and me, my little chemical sensitive self, walked in and realized that this is probably not a good thing for me. Was a little bit reactive, but I had just been traveling with my Vogue mask. I had just purchased one for myself just out of genuine curiosity, threw it in my purse. And when I got there, and I realized it was an issue, and I really didn't have another place to sleep because it's New York City, I decided to kind of bunk up there for the night, deal with it, and kind of move on with my life the next day. So I used one of these, and the Vogue mask, I couldn't smell the fabric softener through, like, the actual chemical perfume smell. I could not smell it once I got this on. And in the morning, I didn't wake up with any joint aches or brain fog or red burning eyes. I was actually pretty well protected with this guy. Another time that I used it, and this was actually the same mask, so it was multiple uses, was before this, a couple of months before this. I was in San Diego, if I remember correctly, and I was giving a lecture, and probably about an hour before I was going to give the lecture, I went to go use the facilities, and when I walked in, I get one of those, the smell, the wave, the hit, so I call it, and got a little bit kind of like, and went back to my purse, grabbed this mask, popped it on, right, and used the restroom, did my thing, and washing my hands. And as I was washing my hands, I realized I couldn't smell any of that mustiness, any of that scent that was given off when I first walked in. And I was really thankful for that, because I'm sure you guys believe me when I say it's really hard to lecture to and try to educate and answer questions for a large group of people when you're just swimming through brain fog. So these are some 2 options for personal protective choices, and depending if you're someone who needs to be protected from kind of the bigger stuff that you might be reactive to, so more of an allergic picture, or if you're someone that really needs that chemical sensitivity protection, you have a couple of options there. So that's kind of the personal protection element. So what about what happens when you get exposed? What happens when you get exposed is I usually encourage people to get a first aid kit together for them. And for men and women, and if you carry purses or wallets, that's usually where you're going to keep these things. So what I suggest is to go to a local pharmacy or wherever you can get a hold of these things, and find ibuprofen and find Benadryl and those little tear open packets. And if you happen to be someone who carries a wallet, you can always put it in the wallet. You know, if you happen to be someone who carries a purse, same thing. It works out. So these two things are important for two reasons. And I know a lot of people out there might be like, oh gosh, a naturopath is telling me to take an over-the-counter medication. There's a time and a place for everything. The beneficial part about ibuprofen is research has shown that it attenuates TGF beta 1. Now, if you're aware of a lot of the mold illness issues that are happening, TGF beta 1 is really one of the mainstays of throwing your immune system out of whack. When it goes up, it shifts your T helper cells, your drops your T regulatory cells, and does all this other stuff. So in general, you want to really minimize and dampen that initial spike of TGF beta 1 because it flips on an inflammation switch. So ibuprofen is great for attenuating that. The other thing is Benadryl, and there are people out there who say, I can't take Benadryl, I get too tired, and then there's also people out there who say, I can't take Benadryl, I get too wired. And yes, you guys exist, you're not crazy, I know you, I've worked with you before. I know how to navigate these things. And so, sometimes when we're dealing with these exposures, no matter what your reaction is, I might ask you to take a little bit of Benadryl. And that's because it can also dampen the histamine response. And once histamine starts going, it's also signals more inflammation. It messes with your neurotransmitters. And so you can help to prevent some of the mood fluctuations and some of the brain fog stuff that happens with that histamine mediation. So Benadryl, surprise, surprise, it can be really, really helpful. I do suggest that you stay away from pink Benadryl. And when I say Benadryl here, I don't mean to use the particular brand. There's lots of generic brands out there, in particular for diphenhydramine, but sometimes it's just easier to say Benadryl, rolls off the tongue. So in these cases, using a dye-free is what I suggest for people. Always go with the dye-free. We know that pink food coloring can be neurotoxic and causes all kinds of issues, so no pink dye in that Benadryl, okay? So the other things that you're going to want in your first aid kit is a binder. And you can keep a couple, in your wallet, however that looks, or you can opt to also keep some at home. I say both. You want to kind of have the binder on hand, but what's really important usually is after that exposure, getting the diphenhydramine and the ibuprofen in to kind of cut that off and stop that response from going, and then you can work on putting the binder into the system. So, but you don't want to take them at the same time because the binder will bind up those and then they won't work as well. So it might be reasonable to keep the binder at home. And so, whatever the magical binder is that works for you, that's helped get you recovered, is what you will have at home. For some people, that's charcoal. For some people, it's cholestyramine. For other people, it's colesevelam or Welchol. And the list goes on. So I do make sure that people know to have binders at home. Now, some people really do like working with probiotics to degrade mycotoxins. I see the literature, I see the research in it. I think that there can be something really helpful there, but I also have my concerns about maybe what it's being turned into that may or may not be studied yet. So some people have found that they do like having probiotics in their first aid kit, and that's great. And so that's an option too. What I tend to really like doing, for myself included, is making sure that I have some access to green juice. Green juice is like the mojo answer for me. And so, some type of green, usually like a kale or a spinach, usually a little bit of celery in there, and I tend to really max out on ginger, little bit of lemon, little bit of apple. You don't want to go too sugary, you don't want to trigger any inflammation, but you do want to make sure that you're saturating the body in really hearty trace minerals, vitamins, and bioflavonoids. So I think green juice can be really, really great for people, and that added component of that ginger can really just help to knock down some of that inflammation too. And then finally, if you do well with glutathione, if glutathione is one of your allies, then you will take and increase your glutathione. If NAC is your ally instead, you will take your NAC. Or some people do work with other cofactors of these two major antioxidants in the body. And if that's the case, then that's what you'll work. And so that's really the first aid kit that you're working with. So the final thing in the maintenance stage that I have people really bring in to their day-to-day activity is, a few key things. And the first one that is really, really important is the concept of laughter and happiness and positive feelings. And, for some people that might be triggering to hear, or, annoying to hear. And, that's all well and good. And I hear you and I understand that. But when you are in a stress response, when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're anxious, you go into this fight or flight stage. And that fight or flight stage not only has an impact on your nervous system, but of course it has an impact on your hormones and on your immune system. So if you're holding yourself in that fight or flight stress stage in your nervous system, your immune system will follow. So your immune system is going to get up in arms, it's going to get inflamed, it's going to get ready to just do the thing. And what I would really like to see people do is be mindful of how they're feeling, work to allow themselves to come down, to do some somatic experiencing work, to let these things go and let the emotion come, let it go, and then embrace warm feeling. And I'm not asking you to, put on forceful, rosy glasses. Everything has to be perfect and amazing. That's not the way life is. I understand that. But I do really encourage people to find things that make them happy, things that make them just really smile and engage. For some people it might be the baking that they gave up 5 years ago when they got sick. For other people it might be watching kitten videos online. I don't know. It's going to look different for everyone. So what I tell people to do is really find that little piece of whatever it is that you really love and that you really embrace, and hold on to it and work it and be with it and have that as a core thing on your day-to-day. And you'll start to see all these different other doorways open up of things that you can be passionate about and feel good for, and move from a place of gratitude. And so that's really huge in maintenance, because if you can keep yourself propped up and keep yourself moving forward, and feel really good and thankful for the things in your life, then you're going to get less stuck into that track that you've already laid, where I'm sick, I'm feeling poorly, I'm ill, I'm sad. And humans get into this phase where once we lay that foundation in our nervous system, it's so easy for our body to kind of hop onto that automatically and kind of fulfill that neurological process. And so if we can get you out of that and stop you from kind of locking into that pattern, we can really do a lot to prevent that chronic stress and that chronic illness and that chronic shift of the immune system. So the other things that I really encourage people to do: gentle motion, stretching, hydration. Hydration, stretching, and gentle motion is really important because it helps to move the lymphatics under the skin, and it helps get the muscles to pump your blood vessels. And so when you're doing these things and you're getting these things actively moving in your body, you're helping move the circulation. And when you move circulation, you bring nutrients and oxygen to your cells, and you release toxins and you carry them out of the body to via the liver and via the kidneys. So definitely something important to do. And I'm not asking people to go out and run triathlons, just that gentle moving circulation, and make sure that water is a big part of it. Add electrolytes for sure. The reason why I say that is a lot of people who have mold illness issues will have a fluid imbalance shift where they'll drink and drink and drink and drink and pee and pee and pee and pee. And so it's really important to get some salt into that water so they can hold on to their fluids. So, having some of those clear fluids have electrolytes are really important. Other people will choose to incorporate daily detox supports. So some people choose binders, some people will pulse binders, some people will only use binders in that emergency first aid kit. That's really up to you, it's up to the person. Other people will enjoy using NAC or glutathione or some of the other antioxidant precursors in those cases, and that's absolutely fine too. I myself, I adore NAC. I'm sure people know this about me by now. I think NAC is phenomenal, and it's something that I use every day for myself too. And then finally, people I think get really concerned about diet, and there's a time and place for diet. I think that during treatment there can be a very impactful aspect of diet, and then when you get into the maintenance phase, diet's going to look different for everyone. Some people will opt for the low mycotoxin diet, which is absolutely fine. That also tends to have a lot of overlap with the low histamine diet, which is absolutely fine. Some people will tend to do really well on a cycled ketogenic diet, so they'll maybe get into ketosis for a while and kind of, maybe what they say, carb up, or hop off of it for a day or a meal and then go back on it, or maybe a couple of months on, a couple of months off. It's really going to look different for everyone because everyone has a different metabolism, everyone has different exposures, and everyone has different detoxification genetics. So with all that being said, I know we're hitting 27 minutes now. This is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but I'm so happy that you guys tuned in and allowed me the opportunity to kind of share with you what it looks like to be recovered and all of the wonderful things you can do to continue to support yourself after you have been recovered. So if you guys like this video, please feel free to thumbs up and subscribe. I do plan on doing more of these as time marches along. I have been on quite a few podcasts, but I just find that there's so much to say and there's not a lot of time. So please feel free to check that out. Also follow me on Facebook and also on Instagram. Both of those handles are at Life After Mold. Also on Twitter too. So you can follow me there. I do post a good amount of cool tidbits, maybe reposting some interesting research, things like that, interesting mold related news. So definitely hop on there, check that out. Go over to my website, lifeaftermold.com, download the Life After Mold Prevention 101 ebooklet. And finally, if you guys have any questions about my practice, or have any questions about getting established, or as a patient, or as a educational consult, please reach out to us through the contact form on my website. And once again, my website is lifeaftermold.com, www.lifeaftermold.com. Thank you guys so much. Over and out.